Ah, yes, jazz. Right, to know jazz, you have to know a million scales, don't you? You need to know one for each of these complicated chords that jazz musicians insist on playing. You need to know your modes, you need to know your melodic minors, you need to know your melodic minor modes, you need to know your diminished scales, you need to know your altered scales, you need to know your whole tones, you need to know your Barry Harris technique scales. But if you're looking at bop, which is the foundation stone of modern jazz, about 80% of the time, you're basing your vocabulary around one very simple scale that you probably already know. Hello, welcome to Jazz Star Scrapbook. So if you follow the link in the description below, you're going to find a PDF with all the stuff from this video available for a nominal service charge. So scales in general, I mean, they can be a little bit of a contentious topic in jazz, and not everything that we play is a scale. Some people prefer to think of lines being derived from scales, other people prefer not to. However, this video is following really in the school of Barry Harris, which you might see from the books behind me. And Barry Harris was fundamentally a scale-based teacher. He saw vocabularies coming from scales. So if that doesn't interest you, maybe this isn't a video that will engage you. There are other ways of doing it. But if we are going to talk about scales, the nice thing is that we don't have to talk about very many of them. So first of all, what is this all-important mysterious scale I'm talking about? Well, it's something that we call, in the Barry Harris system, the dominant scale. And it goes like this. If I play it in C, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, or in terms of notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, right? And it outlines a C7 chord. This, you might know as the Mixolydian mode, okay? I prefer the name dominant scale, not just because I'm a Barry Harris student, but because the dominant scale goes on the dominant chord, right? Dominant scale, dominant chord, simple as Bosch, right? Okay, that's what we like. In the same way that the major scale goes on the major chord and the minor scale goes on the minor chord. I'm a simple man. I like my terminology simple. What can I say? So we'll put it in G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Same intervals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, right? This is a scale which we can apply to several different common situations you're going to come across in tunes. So probably the most famous one would be the major 2-5-1, which is D minor, G7, C major. Now in this case, what we do is we actually look at the D minor 7 as a sort of suspension or sort of decoration of the G7 chord. So it's not really a chord in its own right. That's how Barry taught it, right? So we're going to just call that past G7. So then we're going to play, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We can play that D minor 7 G7, which is 2 chords in a bar. We're going to play that as a bar of G7, which gives us time to go up to the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're just going up to the 7 because it outlines the chord really nicely, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then just play something on the major chord. We're not really concerned too much with major and minor chords today, but we're just going to go bebop at the end there, right? And that's how you play, with these scales, that's how you play a major 2-5-1. Bebop. Now we can do a minor 2-5-1, and to do that, we're going to play a B flat 7. Now, where does that come from? Well, that relates to the D minor 7 flat 5, which is the first chord of the minor 2-5-1. This thing, right? If you put your thumb there, if you know your Django chords, you might know that's a B flat 9 chord shape. Okay? It relates to the dominant chord and major third below. Now that's a little bit, I find it hard to remember. So how I view it is I view it as the backdoor dominant, right? Which is the dominant a tone or a whole step below the target chord. So if we go to minor, which we normally do in a minor 2-5-1, then I'm going to be viewing that as a B flat 7 moving to C minor. So we just play the scale, starting on B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and then we'll do a bebop. And this time it's a minor bebop, so again G, E flat, whereas the last one was G, E. Or 5-3 if you prefer. Bebop, okay? So just to play that again. Okay, so that's our minor 2-5-1. Okay, what if you want an altered dominant sound? So, for instance, you know, G7 flat 5 going to a C6 or something, right? Or a C69, that's quite a nice resolution. So if you want to play on that, we're going to use something called the tritone substitution. And by the way, you can always make a dominant and alter dominant in jazz because that's just how it works, okay? But here, we're going to use the D flat 7 scale, or the D flat dominant scale, which is a tritone away from G. Like that, right? So we're going to do this, and let's put it in this register. Now, there's a connection between these, G7, B flat 7, D flat 7, which is minor thirds. There should be another one on the E7, but that rarely gets used, actually. That's kind of the odd one out. But these are known in Barry Harris terminology as being the brothers and sisters. The chords linked together by diminished relationship. They all relate to one diminished chord. Okay, so that's a big thing in the Barry Harris system. So I'm now going to show you in a second how to apply this on the tune confirmation. I'll have the whole thing in the handout. For brevity's sake today, I'm just going to do the A sections, right? So, and that's the hard bit anyway. The B section is just 2 2-5-1s, which you should be able to work out if you followed what I was saying. Okay, so by now you might have some questions. Common questions that I get when I outline this approach. One is from a couple of videos ago. There's a guy called Ivan Moskvin, 7638. Hope I'm saying his name right. Yeah, it's basically saying that if you go up and down the scale, then it doesn't sound very good. And the answer is, yeah, that's right, it doesn't, because this is just the scale, and in order to play music, we need to do some work with the scale, okay? Which I'll cover later on in the video if you keep watching to the end. Then I will give you some examples of that. So that's one question. There's another question, which is like, this seems like a lot of work. So, you know, say every time I have to do a minor 2-5-1, I've got to relate the thing to the thing, and why can't I just play over the chord? And there is a reason for this. And the answer is, as I've explained in other videos of a similar sort of nature, that if you play over the half diminished chord, you've got to know lots of like half diminished, Locrian sharp 2 material, which on the whole people don't. And the whole point of using an only one scale over everything, which you can do, is the fact that you can get really good at playing things in that one scale, and then you can apply it everywhere. And hopefully I've just shown you that on confirmation. The only chord which you can't really apply that on are the 1 majors and minors. And while those are nice, we can very simply deal with those with a bebop, which is what we'll be doing for the next few minutes, okay? So there's just one little thing, which is that if we're playing these scales, it's quite nice if we link them into the target chords, the bebop on the target chords, therefore. So if I go, I can put a little neighbour tone there, which sounds quite hip. On the other hand, if I already have an F sharp in the lick, I'll probably use the upper neighbour tone, which is a half step above. Like that, right? So you'll see both. Mostly it'll be the one coming from underneath, but sometimes you'll see that as well. Okay, for this section then, I'm going to take some simple phrases that actually sound a little bit more like music, okay? And the first two are going to be very closely related to basic dominant scales. So the very first one is actually just going down to the root. But instead of going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 like we've been doing, I'm just going to do a little delay on that first note and crush it in to the second note. 1. Turns it into bebop right away, right? So we go, and then that little connection into the bebop phrase. So that'll be our first phrase. Our second phrase will be this descending so-called bebop dominant scale, which is that, right? Okay, and that's known in Barry Harris circles as an added note scale. And you can use any of the added note scales with this, but this is the simple one. And hopefully you can appreciate how close that is to the dominant scale. You do hear things like that in solos. So we're going to apply these through the different chords. We're going to start with a very simple one, which is this. We're going to start with phrase 1, which I've kind of already done. Now we're going to go to minor, so that's a minor 2, 5, 1 and C minor. Yeah, I'm going to go. Okay, and that works perfectly well. Note, so we got the B flat over the G7 chord, which is quite bluesy. Now you have the option if you want to raise that up to the B natural, and then it will match the chord perhaps more. But actually Barry Harris said that you wanted to avoid doing that too much because then you would get stuck in the harmonic minor, which of course is also a different scale from the dominant scale. So we're going to stick with this for the minute. The next one we're going to do is it's a G7 flat 5 going to some sort of C major chord. So we're going to go, yeah, you could also do it as minor. Okay, and those are your basic situations. Now we're going to do exactly the same process with our second phrase, which is a descending dominant bebop scale. Barry Harris didn't like that name, by the way. That's why I'm putting it in scare quotes. Okay, so this thing again, and we're just going to go. That's a nice little connector there. A little bit vanilla, perhaps. And here's the minor. Notice that we don't have the B flat going against the G7 chord in that one. And here's the one going alto to major. There you go. Sounds pretty hip. So for this one, we're going to use some material that's less obviously scalic, although still related or still drawn from the dominant scale. So the first one is using the famous honeysuckle rose motif, which is like this. And this is a popular one among boppers, among Charlie Parker and all the rest of them. Miles Davis, and what we're going to do is we're just going to have a couple of scale steps down to the C, and we can link it up to the target chord in a major 2, 5, 1 like this. That's quite nice. And we can move it to minor. So then we're going to the altered using the D flat 7, the tritone substituted dominant scale. And for this, we have to make a slight change to what we've been doing. So, because that's coming from a below, you then have the repeated G flat stroke F sharp, which I don't really like. So I would rather come from above into the bebop. I think that sounds better, right? It's okay to make sort of aesthetic judgment calls about these things. Not everything sounds great. You're a musician. You're meant to make decisions about what you like and what you don't like, okay? There's no book that's going to tell you that. Or even a YouTube video with me. My tastes may differ from yours. Okay. Right, the fourth phrase is going to be this thing, which is actually based on a triplet arpeggio. If you watch the last video, there's quite a lot of information about these little bebop elements. It will appear in a puff of YouTube magic above my head. There you go. And also down in the description if you look there as well. This is the basic element here. That's the chord. Again, it's quite tricky to finger, isn't it? Coming down stepwise to the C. Like the last phrase. And then if we connect it to the C major chord now, 2, 5, 1. Okay, those sound quite vanilla, the major ones, don't they? I would usually involve some sort of altered movement before I got to the C major chord, but just for the purposes of this. Right, just apart from that lower neighbour tone. Okay, let's do the minor, which I think sounds a little bit better. So now we're going to do the altered. This will offend people who are really into their chord scale theory, which I really enjoy. Go into major, and it sounds like this. Really cool, right? Okay, and I want to finish off with a couple of ways of connecting to the one chord that are a little bit more interesting. So there's two ways that I use a lot, and I think I tend to lead with when I'm teaching. And the first way is using a diminished chord. So in this case, I put it on the 3rd of G7. Going to C, right? Diminished 7th, or diminished chord, as Barry would call it, going to C. The 5th of the C major there, right? So we tend to, in the Barry-Harris system at least, we tend to define diminished chords as coming from the third of the dominant chord, which I think is also classically correct as well. I prefer it that way. A lot of people say it's a half step up, but the thing is that if you put it on the third, then it resolves up a half step to the target chord, which is nice. Yeah, like this. Yeah, and that's, I think, a more logical way to look at it. So you can use any diminished chord you like to link on to the next chord, right? You're not limited to using that one, but that's the classic one to use. And then the other one is this four phrase like this, which we talked about in the last video, the bebop elements video. Let's give you a couple of examples of me putting these connections in with our phrases. So for instance, this one's on the minor 2-5-1. So we're going to use the B flat 7 version of it, right? And we're going to link it to a B diminished chord and then go into the bebop. So it sounds like this. Right, that's pretty nice. And then we're going to use the altered, so the D7, the tritone substitution, to link into C major. And that sounds like this. Okay. These are quite long, right? They're not the shortest phrases. So in order to make phrases that are a bar long, and I do think it's worth doing this because a lot of tunes, for instance, Confirmation, have a lot of these 2-5-1 things that are basically just like the 2-5 bit is just like for a bar. So you're going to be playing dominant stuff in that particular scale for a measure or a bar and then moving on, right? So it's quite good to have these shorter phrases. In order to do that for us, we're going to have to shorten the phrase and then add in the connector. And the connector in this case is like, it's worth 2 beats. So we're going to shorten the first phrase to like 2 beats as well. And the same for the fourth phrase, although it sort of starts on the upbeat. You can start anywhere you like, but typically it starts on the upbeat of 3. So it's 3 and, right? So I suppose the upbeat of 4, but it starts on the 3 and is what I'm trying to say. So because of that, you will shorten the previous phrase to be like 2.5 beats. So slightly different, but you'll get used to it. So we'll start off by using a shortened version of phrase 4, which sounds like this. Yeah, just 2 beats, 1 and 2 under. 1 and. It's quite nice. We can use the 4 phrase with, for instance, another version of phrase 4, but this time we're going to use it on the alter scale. So yeah, that's quite nice. Anyway, that's all we've got time for in this video. There'll be some more examples in the handouts. For now, I'm just going to play you out with a little improvisation using this idea on the tune Confirmation using my thinking from earlier. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please post any comments or questions below, and I'll see you on the next one.